Week 1 of fantasy football is over and a lot just happened. Every year we learn so much about these teams that we didn't know during the preseason, and because of that, there's some running backs right now who look very appealing on your waiver wire. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 5 running backs you need to pick up in your leagues before week 2 starts. And if you're not familiar, I'm Sal Vetri. I've been helping people win their fantasy leagues for nearly 8 years and plan to do the same for you in this video. And let's start things off with Dylan Sampson of the Cleveland Browns. He's their 4th round rookie running back because he had one of the more intriguing roles in week 1, especially among the rookie running backs. You see Ashton Denti, Travion Henderson, Omarion Hampton, all these rookies getting a ton of hype. Sampson had better production and honestly maybe even a better role. Now the obvious question becomes, how long does that last? Well, let's get into it. For a little bit of background, Dylan Sampson is a talented running back. Last year in college across 13 games, 258 yards, he operated as a workhorse, nearly 258 carries, nearly 1,500 rushing yards, 6 yards per carry. He actually was a decent receiver as well with 20 receptions, 143 yards in his final year at Tennessee. He played 3 seasons there. He ended up coming out early, and Dylan Sampson was taken in the 4th round by the Cleveland Browns, who wanted to completely rebuild their running back room because last year the combination of Jerome Ford and what was left of Nick Chubb just wasn't doing it. Now what really popped for Sampson in week 1 was just the overall snaps that he saw next to the veteran that they trust in Jerome Ford, and also his passing game role. Because if we pull up PFF right here, this is their snaps from week 1, the usage in the game logs. They do very good work over there. 76 was the number down here that you could see, the total snaps for the Browns offense. Sampson ended up playing 33 of those, so close to 50%, 45% or so. The veteran, as it was expected, Jerome Ford, played 41 snaps, over 50%, but it was nowhere near as many as I thought he was going to see. Dylan Sampson comes out here and earns 8 targets compared to just 1 for Jerome Ford, and then you scroll over even more, he ends up earning 12, well, let's actually look at this, 12 overall carries compared to 6 for Jerome Ford. So the rookie Dylan Sampson, this is probably going to go under the radar, especially because Josh Allen had the crazy Sunday night and Derrick Henry was a monster and Christian McCaffrey sees 31 touches, right? All these other veteran players. Well, Dylan Sampson, the rookie, saw 20 opportunities in week 1, and he turned these 20 opportunities into some solid fantasy production. He ends up putting out 13 points in an offense that honestly, for the most part, struggled against a bad Bengals defense, right? They put up numbers, but not enough. You can see right here, 29 rushing yards. He caught all 8 of his targets for 64 yards. So he goes out there, he puts up 90 total yards. He has the 8 receptions. If you're in a PPR format, you feel even better about Dylan Sampson, what he did if you were forced to start him in a flex, RB2 in a deeper league, and he goes out and he gets you 16, 17 plus fantasy points. So overall, here's how the usage breaks down. He played 43% of the snaps, ran 33% of the routes, and saw 20 opportunities. And oh yeah, he earned a target on over a third of his routes run. Now, when Joe Flacco is checking the ball down on nearly a third of Dylan Sampson's routes, that probably tells you more about this Browns offense and their ability of their wide receivers and tight ends downfield to get open, but at least for a couple of weeks, we'll take that out of Sampson. Now, as I mentioned, the obvious question is, how long does this last? Because as you can see, the Cleveland Browns and their 2nd round pick finally reached an agreement, 4 years, $11.5 million deal that is fully guaranteed as well. So the 2nd round pick ends up signing after obviously a turbulent offseason and his own off the field issues. And the reports are, as of right now, that he could play as soon as week 2. Now, this is a player who did not get any reps in during the offseason. He's a rookie, no NFL reps in during the offseason when it comes to training camp usage, preseason usage, so it might take him a little bit of time to get all the way worked up in this playbook, maybe even to get into game shape. At the end of the day, I do think Quinshon Judkins is the RB1 of this team, but there's no way in hell that after what you saw Dylan Sampson as a receiver, I should say, do in week 1, that he's not going to be involved at some point this season. Jerome Ford as well is a running back that can go out there and pass protect. We'll see if Quinshon Judkins' pass protection as we get more weeks in the year is up to par. I would say by maybe week 4 or so, Quinshon Judkins could be involved in this offense, but there's also a world where the NFL suspends Quinshon Judkins 2, 3, 4 plus games as well because their investigation is currently still ongoing. So with all this information being said right now, Dylan Sampson, if I pull up Yahoo, no affiliation this year with Yahoo, I'm just using this to look at. You can look at any platform you want. 46% is how rostered he is this year, which means he's available in 54% of leagues right now. And all I have to say is that I think at least for one more week, he'll probably operate as the main passing down back on a team that I know they kept it close with the Bengals, a division game right away week 1. They're probably not going to be in a lot of close games this year and playing from behind, which could lead to even more checkdowns from Joe Flacco. Okay, so that's the Dylan Sampson breakdown, but we should go a little bit more in depth on Quinshon Judkins because the guy did sign his deal and he is the biggest name in this backfield with probably the biggest ceiling. If you look at what he did in college, by the way, he ended up doing this at Ohio State when he transferred. He goes for over 1,000 yards in his final year there. He was the only running back in this draft class, if you look at his production, nearly 1,600 yards, over 1,100, over 1,000, to have 1,000 plus yards every single season. He had at least 16 touchdowns every single season. This was a quality running back from Ole Miss and then Ohio State. Also caught 20-plus balls his final 2 years. There's a reason why Quinshon Judkins went at the top of the second round to the Cleveland Browns, and a lot of people thought, hey, this could be a late first-round pick. Probably not, but could be. Here's just some more stats to show you how good that this guy was. He ended up hitting 22 miles per hour in a game versus Kentucky, showing that he actually does have quality speed. A lot of people thought it was only Travion Henderson and that Ohio State backfield that had speed. Not the case. This is from Austin Abbott, by the way, on Twitter. He had 19 touches per game in his career on the ground, never missed a game, played all 42 games, and he scored 50 touchdowns in 42 games. This is a guy that gets to come into a Kevin Stefanski-led offense now that wants to run the ball, that wants to use 2 tight ends. We saw that in week 1 with Harold Fannin having a nice game, and obviously David Njoku. And now he's going to be on this team, but again, the question does become, Quinshon Judkins is scheduled to meet with the NFL this week about his investigation. There's a real possibility, even a likelihood according to one source, that he'll make his NFL debut next Sunday against Baltimore. Okay, next Sunday against Baltimore, we just saw James Cook have a decent game. He found the end zone. We saw Josh Allen as well find the end zone multiple times. So this could be a spot where Quinshon Judkins, even if he isn't efficient, doesn't know the full playbook, is at least in there for red zone usage, maybe goal line usage, and can snag a touchdown or 2. As I mentioned, there wasn't really anybody who stood out from like a running game perspective. I talked about Dylan Sampson just a moment ago. This was because he ended up having those 8 targets produced as a receiver, 60-plus yards. But Jerome Ford didn't do much. On his 41 snaps in this game, he only saw 6 carries. If you actually look at the breakdown of this, 6 carries for 8 yards, 1.3 yards per carry. Yeah, I think Quinshon Judkins, even with no practices, can do better than 1.3 yards per carry against the Bengals defense, by the way. The Bengals defense that almost every single position last year was dominating. That, yes, sure, they added a first-round talent in this past NFL draft to their defensive line, but other than that, another defense that's going to look like should be getting pushed over by most offenses. The Browns weren't able to do so. But if I come back to this page, even Dylan Sampson, who was able to earn 12 carries, only 29 yards, 2.4 yards per carry. Obviously, they could use somebody on the early down situations in this backfield, and that person is going to be Quinshon Judkins, who can step in right away and go out there and produce early down usage, can maybe carve out a role in the red zone. The problem for him in terms of the upside is 1, potential looming suspension. 2, he's not much of a pass catching running back compared to Jerome Ford's abilities, and definitely Dylan Sampson's abilities like you saw in week 1 there. So I'm not sure he'll ever be like a workhorse, at least right away. But with all that said, the guy is only rostered in 55% of leagues right now. He went unrostered in almost 50% of leagues, which is pretty crazy. So if he's available right now in 45 to 50+% of leagues, yes, he's a waiver wire target for you. He should have been added just to see what happens for the first couple of weeks, because they're probably going to sign their second round pick, right? He's still a chance that he ends up going out there and getting suspended. But if he's free on the waiver wire and you only have to put a 10 to 15% bid in for him, maybe you can get him pretty cheap. This is a guy who could potentially be, as soon as next week, like a 5th to 6th round caliber fantasy pick for you if he goes out there and he's the lead running back for this team, obviously with the caveat that there's a potential suspension looming. Now, Quinshon Judkins is not going to be a top 50 overall player for me in my rankings for week 2, but if you want to see my full top 50 players for week 2 to make sure you're setting the best lineups you can check it out completely free, link down below, or you could head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. Once again, that is fantasyrankingsfree.com. That takes you to this page. You just enter your email and that will instantly send you the top 50 rankings. Be sure to check your spam and promotional folders as well. Now, if a top 50 isn't enough for you because it doesn't get you down to where you need to for your leagues, you can check out my full top 150 in the fantasy blueprint, as well as positional rankings for every position, matchup notes like cornerback, wide receivers, running backs against defense for every single position and every single fantasy relevant player. All those tools can be found in my fantasy blueprint. It's what I use in all my leagues, and over 10,000 people are currently using in their leagues. You can check it out right now if you want to with the link in the description below, or you can head to jointheblueprint.com. That takes you to this page to let you know every single thing you get, all the things I just mentioned earlier, the rankings, the projections, also waiver wire tiers, the top 40 overall waiver wire players with fab budget requirements, all these as well as testimonials here from a bunch of people. So if you want to become a part of the community as well, the ability to ask me questions one-on-one and not just hope that I answer it on a Sunday live stream, you can check it out, link down below, or you can head to jointheblueprint.com to smack around your competition this year. All right, the next guy we got to talk about is another rookie, and this guy's going to be DJ Giddens of the Indianapolis Colts. Look, we've gone 3 straight rookies, but for a reason here, right? Just so happens to be so, because he might be one of the most important waiver wire pickups if this happens. There was a report from Roto Baller here that Jonathan Taylor exited the game with an apparent injury. Now, I have Jonathan Taylor. It was an undisclosed injury, they said on Sunday's game. I have Jonathan Taylor on a couple of fantasy teams, including in the Flock League, so I was watching this very closely. He dominated for 90 total yards in the first half, and then midway through the third quarter, he left the game, never returned. The team was up 23-0, but it seems like he did take a big shot, and then they just kept him on the sidelines, and Giddens was playing well, and then it was a 30-point lead, so they just didn't play him in the fourth quarter, which kind of stinks. You only got 2.5 quarters of good play out of Jonathan Taylor. So let's just hope that they were being cautious and that it's not actually some sort of undisclosed injury that we find out about by maybe the time that you're watching this, because if that is the case, that's exactly where DJ Giddens starts to become very interesting, because here's a little bit of a background on DJ Giddens. They took this guy in the 5th round of the NFL draft because of his explosive past in college production. Here's that explosive pass. His final 2 years of college, 5.5 yards per carry, over 1,200 yards. His final year, over 1,300 yards and 6.6 yards per carry. Also showed the ability at Kansas State to catch the ball with 29 and 21 receptions. You end up fast forwarding right here. He goes to the NFL Combine, 4.43 speed at his size, 92nd percentile. So he has top 10% speed, top 10% burst. And here's where things get interesting. He ended up playing 18 snaps in this game. Okay, no big deal. Jonathan Taylor played 52 snaps. Jonathan Taylor played 100%, 43 of 43 first half snaps. DJ Giddens wasn't on the field. No other running back saw a snap, a touch, a target in the first half other than Jonathan Taylor for the Colts. But then Taylor does not end up coming back for maybe an injury. Maybe it was just a big hit. They're being cautious with a guy who's always been injured. On average has missed 5.3 games per year the past 3 years. And Taylor, after his 52nd snap, doesn't play again. That's where DJ Giddens comes in. Now he plays 18 total snaps in the game, but here's exactly what the breakdown looked like once Taylor left. Giddens played 86% of the Colts snaps and handled 12 of 13 touches once Jonathan Taylor left the game that final quarter to quarter and a half. So that 12 of 13 touches ends up being 92% of the opportunities during that time, and he saw the third down usage as well. I mean, that's the exact type of usage that we've seen in the past when Jonathan Taylor misses time. Over the past couple of years, guys like Zach Moss, guys like Trey Sermon, heck, even last year at times, Tyler Goodson was coming in there, and they were getting these nice rolls. Maybe it wasn't 92% opportunity share, but it was 50, 60, sometimes 70% of the snaps. But those players, like I just mentioned, Zach Moss, Trey Sermon, even Tyler Goodson, they're not nearly as good, I would say, of an athlete or a prospect. Goodson's a solid athlete, don't get me wrong. An athlete or a prospect as DJ Giddens, and we even just saw that in the first game. If you watch the film, Giddens looked good on that final quarter and a half of play. He had a 12-yard gain. He had multiple gains of 7 or 8 plus yards. So if a guy like Zach Moss in the past can average 13 fantasy points per game a couple of years ago when Jonathan Taylor had the holdout and ended up missing the start of the season, if a guy like Trey Sermon can have these spike weeks of 18 fantasy point outings, right? I think that Giddens is going to have a similar opportunity if and when Jonathan Taylor was to miss time, with just more explosiveness. Fingers crossed Jonathan Taylor report doesn't come out that, oh yeah, he got a little bit of a back injury or a rib or a chest. Let's just hope that doesn't happen, right? But if it was to happen, Giddens, who is available in 3% of leagues, becomes the top waiver wire ad. Giddens then, even in the future weeks, is somebody that should probably be stashed, especially if you're a Jonathan Taylor fantasy manager and you have more than like 4 or 5 bench spots in your league. If you have 6 bench spots in a 12-man league, that final bench spot shouldn't be a backup tight end. Just hold DJ Giddens because of things like this where we have scares with Jonathan Taylor's injuries. Now, similar things could be said for Trey Benson of the Arizona Cardinals. Not a rookie, a second-year player, their former third-round pick from last year, because this is a guy who last season, not a lot was like really being said about Trey Benson. Heading into the year, there was a lot of hype that he could take James Conner's job, but he just never lived up to those expectations. But all offseason, heading into year 2, there have been quotes out of the team, Kyler Murray, James Conner, the coaching staff, that says, like, we have 2 RB1s here. This is going to be maybe not more of a split backfield, but Trey Benson's going to be involved based on all the smoke that we're hearing. Now, if you're not familiar with Benson out of Florida State, arguably was like the top RB for a lot of people in last year's NFL draft. A lot of it had to do with his 4.3 speed at his size of about 220 pounds. So one of the best speed size combinations according to Player Profiler, top 2% speed, as you can see right here. Now, Trey Benson, like I mentioned, heading into this year, a ton of hype coming out for Trey Benson entering year 2, and a Cardinals offense that people were expecting to run the ball a little bit more because of what they did on their offense in the offensive line, but also the defense, trying to improve the defense so they could also run the ball, stay in closer games. And the hope is that Benson can outproduce what he did here last year of just 22 rushing yards per game, of just 4.5 receiving yards per game. I mean, the guy didn't even total 400 total yards as a third-round pick behind an aging running back. That aging running back, James Conner, played well, stayed healthy, but we just never got to see it out of Trey Benson because of that. But so far, week 1 this year, the role is looking a lot better. Because if I pull up the PFF stats, the Cardinals offense ran 66 plays in week 1 against the Saints. 43 of those went to James Conner, which makes sense, but Trey Benson was able to see right away 33% of the snaps. This is important, but the more important piece of this is that on his touches, he actually was a lot more productive on his touches, and he was used in different ways than he was last year. Let me explain. First off, he was more efficient on these touches. Obviously, this 52-yard explosive play is going to do a lot of that for you. As you can see, he misses a couple tackles. He goes down the sideline, and he just shows off his speed, that 4.3 speed, and the size as well, breaking tackles. So that's a piece of it, right? Trey Benson ends up with 8 carries for 69 yards. Now, one of those carries goes for 50-plus yards, so if you take that out, it's just 7 carries for like 20 yards, and it doesn't look all that good. But Conner, just 12 carries, 39 yards, 3.3 yards per attempt. Also wasn't all that efficient either. But the big thing here, according to PFF, if you look at these circles right here, the green circles are Trey Benson. So overall, you can see right here, he played 22 snaps like we mentioned, 43 for James Conner. But the real key here is this one right here. Third downs, Trey Benson played 10 out of 13 third downs over James Conner. This was not happening last year. Last year, James Conner was either playing these downs or Amari DiMercato was playing these passing downs, long down and distance, and pass protection. So if they're trusting now Trey Benson to take on Amari DiMercato snaps and James Conner snaps a little bit, that's a good usage right away week 1 out of Trey Benson. The upside from Trey Benson is always if the 30-year-old James Conner, who outside of last year was averaging 4 missed games per season in his career, if Conner was to miss time, Benson comes in as a workhorse back. But the goal was to see if they can trust him. Can he be a workhorse, seeing every opportunity? And there's a case that happens based on week 1 usage. If Conner goes down, I feel good about Benson seeing 60 to 70% of the snaps and it not being a split with Amari DiMercato, because we just saw no other running back in week 1. Conner 66% of the snaps, Benson 33% of the snaps in week 1. Nobody else was involved. That's very good usage for Benson and is skyrocketing up my handcuff rankings right now to the point where he needs to be rostered in all leagues. The fact of the matter is he's not. He's only rostered right now in 31% of leagues, as you can see right here on Yahoo, which that means he's available in over 60% of your fantasy leagues. Again, he's not worth going out there and throwing 20% of your fab budget around. He's not going to come out and start next week. James Conner is still on this team, but it's just building up these resources in the background to make sure your bench is the best possible place it could be. Ollie Gordon in week 1, offense didn't look that good in Miami. Devon Achane had a lot better role than Ollie Gordon, which was the expectation, but it was a lot better. Ollie Gordon wasn't all that involved, and Jalen Wright could return at any point. So I'd rather be having right now Trey Benson on my roster than an Ollie Gordon. Now, before we get into the next running back that you need to consider adding, I don't know if you know this, but football is back, and so is your chance to cash in like never before. With my partners, DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, and your game day instincts can help you score real money fast. So now here's what you need to know. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats from breakout rookies to elite quarterbacks and unlock the upside every snap brings. And the better your calls, the bigger the payouts. Look, there's no gimmicks, no convoluted rules. It's just you, your reads, and your shot at big returns. Now here's the kickoff bonus. New DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. So all that's left for you to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code SAL, make the right call, and ride the upside. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Next man up, we got to talk about Kenneth Gainwell. Yes, Kenneth Gainwell, believe it or not, of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was quietly one of the most valuable roles, well, maybe not one of the most valuable, but had a valuable role quietly in week 1. And this was very in line with what we saw in the preseason. Kenneth Gainwell was operating ahead of the rookie Caleb Johnson and seeing decent usage with the starting unit. Then you fast forward to week 1 of the Pittsburgh Steelers' wacky and wild game against the New York Jets. They run 56 plays on offense, and once again, Kenneth Gainwell with his 29 snaps is playing ahead of Caleb Johnson like we saw in the preseason, who only saw 2 snaps, but he's also playing ahead of slightly Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren, 25 snaps, doesn't even play 50%. Kenneth Gainwell, 29 snaps, plays over 50% of the snaps, runs the most routes on the team, which was surprising, 16 routes compared to 10 for Jaylen Warren. Because of that, he sees one more target than him as well. And not only that, if we slide over a little bit, Kenneth Gainwell was able to see 7 carries in this game, 11 for Jaylen Warren, just 1 for Caleb Johnson on his 2 snaps played in this game. So Kenneth Gainwell comes into this offense, and what does he have? He has a showing of being very efficient and being able to handle a lot of carries. He showed that during his time in college. That is something that Arthur Smith likes, and if the team can't currently trust their 3rd-round rookie Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren is a little bit undersized, maybe that's why Kenneth Gainwell is going on the field more. And Kenneth Gainwell is a veteran running back, which obviously 3rd-round rookie Caleb Johnson is not, and we talked about it all off season. Aaron Rodgers loves his veteran running backs. He loves them a ton. Last year, he showed a little bit of love to Isaiah Davis, the Jets rookie running back, on some passing situations, but for the most part, he was peppering Breece Hall with targets. He was peppering Braylon Allen as well at times, but he was peppering Breece Hall, and at the end of the day, throughout his entire career, he has loved veteran players, and as he approaches 40 to 41 to 42 years old, Aaron Rodgers does not like taking hits. He likes those veterans and pass protection more. And that's what he saw out of Kenny Gainwell yesterday. He was playing a lot in those situations where he had to pass protect. If we pull up the actual breakdown of these snaps overall for the Steelers running backs, according to PFF, Kenneth Gainwell is in green right here. What does Kenneth Gainwell have? He played all 8 third downs. Those are pass protection situations. He played the only snap in the 2-minute offense. This ended up leading to Kenneth Gainwell seeing the most usage. If Kenneth Gainwell is going to play the 3rd downs and maybe the 2-minute offense, we only got a 1 snap sample, over Jaylen Warren, Jaylen Warren's toast. It might not last all year, might be a 1-week thing, but this is a messy backfield, and right now Kenneth Gainwell is seeing the useful touches in it. He's seeing those passing down situation touches, but I will say Jaylen Warren saw all 3 snaps in the red zone. Now, there weren't many red zone trips for the Steelers in this game because they were scoring from outside the red zone, but he saw all 3 snaps in the red zone, which does keep him fantasy at least viable, but this is a messy situation where if anybody is rising in this backfield, it's Kenneth Gainwell. If anybody's falling, it's Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren now. At the end of the day, I mean, none of these dudes were that productive. 11 carries for 37 yards. yards against a tough defense, 3.4 yards per attempt, 7 carries for 19 yards. Not great either. Kenneth Gainwell, if you come down here, did catch all 3 of his passes, just 4 yards though. Like, nobody was all that productive in this Pittsburgh backfield. In terms of the receiving game, I mean, that's a different video that we'll talk about. Nobody really stood out either. Like, 4 receptions is going to be your leader for the most part. 5 catches, 15 yards for Jonnu Smith. So it's a pretty spread out offense, which is kind of what we're accustomed seeing when Aaron Rodgers really can kind of have his way in some offenses. It's spreading it out. Kind of what we're accustomed seeing with Arthur Smith, spreading it out. These guys married together is going to be fantasy chaos. So Kenneth Gainwell, as you would expect, is only rostered right now in 1% of Yahoo leagues and fantasy leagues. So this is not a guy you're going out there and spending a priority waiver on it. But I know a lot of people will watch these videos and they'll see Dylan Sampson and Quinshon Judkins at the beginning of the video and say, these guys were drafted in my league. These guys are rostered in my league, right? They'll be, the Cheeto dust will be on the chest. They'll be typing. They'll be like, they're rostered in my league. Maybe that was a little bit too cruel, but it was probably right on the nose. If you're watching this, you know who you are. But anyways, look, here's one for you deep dive guys. Kenneth Gainwell is available in 99.6% of leagues. I don't want to hear the comments saying he was rostered in my league, pushing up their glasses and all, right? Okay, let's get into the next one here. This one is interesting because it's Kyle Monangai, the Bears rookie, who has yet to play a game. The Bears play on Monday Night Football, the 7th round rookie running back, and by the time you're watching this, he might have already played. He might have done absolutely nothing. That's completely okay because I'm bringing this up as a stash option for you. The reason I'm bringing this up is because as of right now, Roschon Johnson is questionable for Monday night. He did not practice earlier in the week with a knee with a knee injury, I believe, might have been a foot, but a knee injury. So Roschon Johnson, there's a chance he misses or he's severely limited. If that's the case, the backfield is going to be DeAndre Swift, who I would consider to be a must start because he's just going to see a lot of touches, 15 to 20 plus touches in this game because of these other injuries. And Kyle Monangai, who was dealing with his own injuries as well, but he's going to be playing in this game. And the own coach right before the game started, Ben Johnson, said, I trust that guy at this point, which is a big thing to say for a young guy like that. He tends to do everything right. I do believe that his pass protection could need some work as well, but Ben Johnson is saying this about Kyle Monangai heading into a game where they might need to lean on him as the RB2. I just want to see how the backfield plays out. If you're watching this before Monday Night Football, he's probably worth a stash just to keep on the end of your bench. If he doesn't do anything, pick him up tonight before Monday night, cut him tomorrow if he does nothing. And if you need a little bit of background on him, he put up over 1,200 yards and averaged 5 yards per carry the past 2 years of his college career. He did that while playing at Rutgers for 4 seasons, came out at age 22 as a senior. This is a guy who got a ton of hype during the preseason, and he is also available in 90+% of leagues. Since he got so much hype in the preseason, he is not rostered like Kenneth Gainwell in just 1% of leagues. So he's rostered in 9% of leagues, meaning he's available in over 90% of leagues right now. I already did this in one of my leagues. I actually did it in the Flock League. I picked him up at the end of Monday Night Football or before Monday Night Football just to see what happens. If he ends up seeing a lot of touches or, God forbid, DeAndre Swift goes down, now I have that guy on my bench for free rather than waiting to Tuesday morning. And if he does absolutely nothing, which again is very likely and probably the scenario you're going to see here, well then just drop him on Tuesday morning and no harm was done. It took 2 seconds to add and drop him. Next up, I just want to remind you about these IR players. Tyjae Spears is on the IR and he is available in over 50% of fantasy leagues right now. And this is a player that can come out there right away for you if he returns in week 5 off of this high ankle sprain and be valuable. So pick him up. If you have an IR spot in your league that's not currently filled with somebody valuable like, I don't know, Brandon Ayuk, go out there and pick up Tyjae Spears at this point. This is a guy who can actually help you on your team. This is a guy who, as a rookie in 2023, forced a 50% split backfield with Derrick Henry, which basically nobody else has ever done since then, averaged 5.5 yards per touch. In his second year, when healthy towards the end of the season, the final 3 games, he dealt with 4 different injuries this year. He put up 20 fantasy points, over 80 yards per game total in those 3 games. So when this guy is healthy, which I know is ironic because he's not currently healthy, but if by midseason he could be healthy and you could just stash him in IR until week 5 or 6, why not do that? It's completely free. There's no harm. It doesn't take up a roster spot. Now, I should mention that Tony Pollard is obviously the lead running back in this backfield, but Tony Pollard last year wasn't all that efficient, averaged just it was 40th in yards per carry and yards per touch outside the top 40. This past week, he was the only running back they trusted, obviously. Julius Chestnut, 6 snaps, 51 snaps for Tony Pollard. This led to a ton of work for Pollard. 18 carries, wasn't efficient on them once again, 3.3 yards per carry, had a fumble in this game as well. Now, I will say this was a very difficult matchup that he ended up going out there against the Denver Broncos, so we can't really take too much out of this one, but last year Tony Pollard wasn't efficient, especially the second half of the year. To start this year, he's not efficient. If these things continue, it gives the Titans a reason by week 5, if that's when Spears comes back, to say, let's make this more of a split like we wanted it to be. So as of right now, just so you know, Tyjae Spears is rostered in 34% of leagues, meaning he's available in 66% of leagues. This is a guy who should be in your IR spot. If you do not have Brandon Ayuk currently in your IR spot or somebody else who might be on the PUP list, take Tyjae Spears and put him there. He's a better IR stash than guys like Jalen McMillan and guys like Christian Watson at this point. So a lot happened in week 1, and these are the running backs after week 1 and heading into week 2 that should be on your radar when it comes waiver wire time. Now, the wide receiver version of this video will be up on Tuesday, maybe by the time you're watching it, and when it is up, it will pop up right here. But until then, I appreciate you all tuning in. Best of luck on the waiver wires this week, and if you have 2 seconds, hit the subscribe button before you go. I appreciate that a ton. I appreciate you all a ton.